In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 topics that I'm sure you're going to be familiar with respect to job interviews, and I'm trying to give you here a slightly different perspective, if you want an interviewer's perspective, to help you to understand their importance for the purpose of course, passing your job interview. First, the company's culture. So I do recommend you to read about the company's culture because I believe that's an interesting learning exercise. Now, from here to tailoring your answers with company's culture in mind, I believe that's far stretched. Of course, if you include a couple of keywords here and there, but don't change yourself for the purpose of a job interview to fit into company's culture simply because the company's culture is a policy supposed to govern the entire company, right? So if they say things move fast here, it doesn't mean all the roles should move with the speed of sound. There are roles such as, accounting, where, you have to carefully manage risk and other stuff, right? So company's culture, you should really understand its value for the purpose of job interview. The second thing I want to touch upon here would be references. So some of you do have a reference for that role, have a strong reference, and I wanted to explain to you my experience with the importance of these references. So I found that these things are quite significant and useful to pass screening rounds. So if you quickly go through those screening rounds and go all the way to the final interview, that they're hugely beneficial. Of course, if you have some relevant references, but there's a misconception that you have strong references that's going to play a significant role for passing your final interview. And that, I believe, it's a very dangerous assumption. And I can tell you from experience, I've heard countless numbers of stories. Hey, then it's just going to be a formality. Just let's do a quick role play because it's going to be a formality because I have a strong reference for the on-site interview. And in my experience, this does not work, right? So you should understand the value of being referenced for the role is more for the screening rounds when compared to the final interview rounds. The third thing I want to touch upon here would be your CV. Now, of course, your CV is important for the purpose of job interview. However, there's a tendency for some candidates to redo your CV right before the final rounds of your interviews. And I believe there's nothing wrong with that so long you feel prepared and ready to interview, as it would be an extra nice to have. However, what happens here sometimes is that you prefer to redo your CV rather than to prep for the interview. And I believe that's a huge distraction, and you should maybe consider it as such if you are going to redo your CV for the purpose of the interview. There are many other distractions, of course, but your CV I found is quite an interesting one. Next one, the fourth, your elevator pitch. Tell me about yourself. I do agree that yes, it's a good idea to make a strong first impression for the purpose of job interview, but I would never agree with someone saying that if you have a strong first impression, you will get the job, or it should be. It will play a decisive role for your interview with a high-performing company or with a proper interviewer. In my experience, this again does not fly. And what I would recommend here to you instead to think of it this way: why would someone ask you to introduce yourself? Okay, they would ask you because that could be a starting point for a conversation. Of course, it's a good idea that you make a strong first impression, but this doesn't mean the conversation will evolve that way. Okay, so what I would advise here is to keep in mind why you're getting asked a certain question. And this goes far beyond the tell me about yourself. For example, if they ask you, tell me about the time when you failed, they don't ask you this because they want to see if you can make something up on the spot, right? They want to see if you prepare for the interview because people cannot answer these questions quite easily if they hear it for the first time. And also, more importantly, they want to see what you learned from that failure. So if you understand why they ask you a certain question, you will be in a far better way to land the job. Okay, so long story short, try to understand why the question gets asked and start from there when preparing an answer for it, including for tell me about yourself. Okay, and the last thing I want to touch upon here would be the STAR format. So the STAR format is a well-known format to answer behavioral questions. Okay, situation, task, action, and result. However, what you should keep in mind here is that the star format was not invented by candidates, it was invented by companies screening candidates. Okay, so if you fit into the star format, you're not going to get any closer to making your answers sound significantly better. Maybe except you're applying for a very junior role. And furthermore, I found quite a few of you have super strong answers without being in the star format. And as soon as you're templating them, they tend to sound a lot more boring and not that interesting, right? So you should understand why the star format was put there, because it makes it easier for an interviewer to screen you, right? So if you give them information in the format they want to hear, it will be easier for them to screen you. If you give a bad answer in the star format, it means it's going to be far more easier for them to screen you out. Okay, so it also goes that way. So in my experience, it's far more important to score better in things such as clarity of thought when compared to templating your answers in the star format, right? So these were the 5 topics I wanted to demystify a little bit of here and talk about their importance. I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.